Hello and a warm welcome to everyone tuning in from all corners of the globe. I'm Rini Shirley, product marketer of Zoho Survey, and your host for today's session on a topic that's vital for every entrepreneur and startup enthusiast: market research for startups. But before we dive in, let's take a moment to go over some housekeeping points for a smoother flow. To ensure a distraction free presentation, all attendees are muted and will remain so. We appreciate your understanding in this matter. For optimal listening, please make sure your audio is accessible through your device, and we value your inputs and questions. Kindly use the Q&A interface to submit any related queries you might have at any point of the presentation, and we'll be happy to answer them. All right. So, the journey of every startup often begins with a spark, an idea that promises to change the world. But how does this idea transform into a successful business? That's where our main focus for today, market research, comes into play. Market research isn't just a term reserved for textbooks, it's the backbone of your startup strategy. It's about understanding your audience, knowing your competition, and most importantly, making informed decisions. It's like having a GPS in the world of business. You know where to go, the pitfalls to avoid, and the fastest route to success. Today, we'll explore how to conduct effective market research, interpret data, and turn insights into action. By the end of this session, you'll not only understand the what and how of market research, but also the why it's indispensable for your startup success story. Now, imagine combining market research with a support system designed to propel startups into their next phase of growth. That's where a special segment comes in. Today, we are thrilled to have Srinalini, product marketer of Zoho for Startups, with us. She'll be shedding light on how they can help startups scale bigger and better. So, over to you, Srinalini.
Thank you for the introduction, Rini. So, hello everyone, and good afternoon, good morning, or good evening, in whichever time zone you are in. I would like to thank everyone for joining this session. So, in this session, I will quickly walk you through the Zoho for Startups program, and I will let you know what we do in general. So, yes, moving on to the next slide. So, the agenda for this session will be, I will just tell you about Zoho, and then I will tell you why we designed the Zoho for Startups program, and finally the offer and what support we offer. So Zoho is a bootstrap company, and we've been doing the business for 25 years, and we've uh, increased our portfolio from one app to 55 plus apps today. And thanks to our 15K plus employees who have made this possible, and we have established our presence in around 150 plus countries. And thanks to all of you for making it to 100 million users today. And with this, we are a connected ecosystem where we connect with users across the world, and we also have regional teams who help us in bringing more visibility to the company. So, why Zoho, if you might wonder? You might already be knowing the diverse apps that we have, and for every business solution, we have a product, right from sales to marketing to finance to employee experiences and email and collaboration. We have a solution for every problem that a startup might face, while right from their early stage to the late stage. And the second point, like, we are deeply rooted to our values, where we believe in transnational localism, and we believe in how local language helps in business scalability. And we do not sell our data to our users, to anyone without any consent, and we are so clear in what we want and why we gather the data with the relevant consent. You can visit our privacy pages, and it is uh, clearly mentioned why we take the data. And finally, we believe in scaling and providing an affordable software to our users, from right from day one to the scaling stage. So there are places where you might have, for example, if you take Zoho Survey, it started with a simple drag and drop survey product, and today it is a complete feedback management platform, and businesses of any size can use this product. So this is a simple illustration of the timelines of the different products that we have. And it started with CRM and Writer, and today we are a diverse portfolio of 55 plus apps. And coming to Zoho for startups, we believe when, as entrepreneurs and founders, you might be investing your time in a lot of things, right from pitching your idea to investors, finding the right solution for the business problem that you might want to tackle, and setting up an office and everything. So in that problems that you might encounter, you might not invest in the right software, and you might be wondering how to invest in software. In that, keeping that in mind, we created this Zoho for Startups program, where we empower and equip startups with the diverse range of applications, and regardless of what team size you are in, or what stage and what vertical you belong to, we believe in providing this program to every user that might want to explore software for their business. So the impact of Zoho for Startups is, we started this program in India in 2017, and later on we made it global by expanding to other regions. And we've been running this for 6+ years. And in India, we have our presence in 20 plus states, and we have impacted to 12,000 startups with our with our program, and we have collaborated with 150 plus ecosystem enablers like incubators, co-working spaces, or accelerators. And we have conducted 150 plus workshops to show what to let startups adopt Zoho's products for their business. So this is our regional presence, where we have established, as I said, we have established in India, and then we have our presence in some parts of Middle East and Africa, and we have Indonesia. And this year, we are happy to share this news that we have launched in 2 new regions, which is Australia and Brazil, and we are looking to launch in Europe in the next year. So the offer is, you will have regional sensitive wallet credits in your Zoho account, and it will be administered in 2 stages if found eligible. And you will get the stage 1 credits right after we validate your application. And then once you host your domain with Zoho Mail, you get the stage 2 credits. And these credits can be used for 360 days, where you can use these credits to purchase applications, any Zoho application, including suites and products. By suites, we mean Zoho One, Zoho Workplace, CRM Plus, and everything. And further, once you use this app to purchase once you use this credit to purchase any app, you can use it for new subscriptions and monthly renewals. If you are subscribing to monthly renewals initially, you can use these credits to subscribe further. And you can also use this to upgrade your editions and also on select add-ons. However, we have few terms and conditions for this, where we do not give credits to paid users of Zoho, or who are active, or they have a history of paid subscriptions to any Zoho app. And also, we do not give credits to users who already have benefited from this program. For more information, you can visit our website www.zoho.com/startups. And you can also reach out. We have a dedicated support team to help you with that any technical assistance that you might need after you get the credits. And if you have any questions related to the wallet credits and the program in itself, you can reach out to us. Finally, you can also check us out on the social media handles. We are here, and you can follow and for knowing where we are active and what we do and what workshops we conduct. So yes, thank you so much, Rini. I will pass on the session to Rini now.
Wow, thank you so much for that insightful overview of Zoho for Startups, Srinalini. It's inspiring to see how the team is actually committed to nurturing the startup ecosystem. And now we are thrilled to transition to our next exciting segment. I am very happy to introduce Arthur Higgins, a senior consultant from Sint, who brings a wealth of experience in market research. Arthur has helped numerous startups succeed through in depth research and actionable insights. In this segment, Arthur will dive into the intricacies of market research for startups. His experience and knowledge are invaluable, especially for those of you looking to make a significant impact in your respective industries. So, without further ado, let's welcome Arthur Higgins. So, Arthur, the floor is yours.
Oh, thank you so much, Rini. I'm really excited to connect with everyone today. Rini, would you mind just passing controls over to me so that I can, there we go, accept. Awesome. So I'm going to just go ahead and share my screen. So as you've heard so far, especially with it being 2023, we see such a rise in terms of market research and market research being driven specifically via online technologies. Cint, the company I work for, is one of the leaders in the world in terms of accessibility to online audiences for market research purposes. And then we are also a key driver in terms of technology, and we've partnered with Zoho today to do this presentation. And I'm hoping to be able to share some expertise on trends that are going on in terms of that modernization of market research, some best practices that will be really complementary to starting to engage more with Zoho and their offerings. So Rini, if you want to skip ahead a couple slides. Yeah, so in this agenda, we're going to just do that market research overview. We're going to talk through kind of best practices, some key insights in regards to these audiences that will be taking online questionnaires and surveys and engaging with you to gather or provide insights. And then we will wrap things up with talking about next steps in terms of the Zoho offering. So without further ado, I think Rini gave me a wonderful introduction here, so we can skip ahead on this one, and then we'll just segue right into the content of the presentation. Okay, so what is market research? Market research is also known as marketing research. It is the process of determining the viability of a new service or product through research conducted directly with potential customers. Market research allows a company to discover the target market and get opinions and other feedback from consumers about their interest in that product or service. Market research can also be used by social or political organizations to understand trends or sentiments among a particular group. And at Cint, we see market research being conducted of all of these makes and forms, and Zoho is such a key partner for being able to provide you with opportunities to field market research of all of these types. The type of research can be conducted in-house by a company or organization itself, or by a third-party company that specializes in market research. Types of market research can be surveys, product testing, focus groups, among others. And test subjects are typically compensated with product samples or a paid stipend for their time. It's really a key component of the plan for research and development when it comes to marketing campaigns. So on the next slide, you can see here a breakdown of some of those common types of market research, traditionally face-to-face interviews, focus groups, telephone interviews, CADI, which is short for computer-assisted telephone interviews, have had a very prominent place in this industry historically. Surveys being sent by mail. I'm very familiar with receiving that myself personally. on certain types of ballot initiatives or political polling, as well as online sampling. And that's my background here at Cint, and going to be sharing some insights from my experience working in the online sampling realm that are going to be really relevant for your work that you do with Zoho moving forward. Awesome. So on the next slide, really when you think about market research, it's very synonymous with thinking about data. The type of market research that I am keenly involved in is of the quantitative insights gathering. So this is where we're helping enable customers to gather massive quantities of data from all types of potential consumer audiences. And that data can be really keen for companies to be able to leverage that data and help model and build strategies around the different types of marketing campaigns that they plan to put into the field. Because your marketing is driven by data, it's very key to also have a plan and strategy around if you're capturing the right type of data, is the audience sampling enough to be able to gather the necessary insights for decision making, and how do you connect that data back to the general strategy of the marketing campaigns that you're hoping to field. Now, you'll see on the next slide, this is a landscape of ResTech. So ResTech is a term that was very populated by our chairman of the board at Cint and founder of Lucid, Patrick Comer. ResTech is terminology kind of used in the same spirit of, if you've heard of the phrasing of MarTech for technology that has enabled marketing. Well, ResTech is the research arm of marketing, and this is just a landscape of all sorts of different players in the field, such as Cint and Zoho, that operate different positions of unique value in the overall supply chain of market research. So it's a broad spectrum of companies that provide analytics, companies that provide creative, as well as companies that provide project management, among many other avenues. And you'll see that one really consistent trend among all of these companies is they are all working to figure out ways to connect audiences faster and with a further reach in terms of the online population, so that potential customers can partner together with these companies in this industry to help be able to reach their potential consumer much faster and be able to make actionable course of action, not to be redundant, off of those insights that they are able to gather from those consumers. So you'll see on the next slide that there are some general principles or rules of thumb when it comes to structuring surveys and designing them, and then implementing a plan of putting those surveys into field to gather insights. And we're going to cover what some of those best practices are. So really, the most important principle to start with in terms of drafting a survey for success is framing around what would be considered a good question. So a good survey question is going to accomplish these four things. It's going to achieve your survey and data goals that you need. It's going to be clear and direct in its phrasing. It's carefully considering the user experience. And so by user experience, what we mean by that is that it puts the respondent in a position to understand the question and feel comfortable in answering it, and making it a real scenario of ease of use in terms of being able to provide the necessary insights that you're looking to gather. There's no sense of disconnect or really challenge for the respondent to be able to provide the information, which can be from both scenarios of clarity, as well as in making sure that we're being cognizant of invasiveness, privacy, as well as phrasing in terms of colloquialisms. Are the structure of the questions reaching the audience and being phrased in a way that they locally would essentially be responding and seeing such a question, which is really important to take into account as we work on a global spectrum and field surveys in markets all throughout the world, many of which are not going to be our native language when we field. And then finally is free from bias. So free from bias, when I say that, think around leading questions or questions that are going to be structured to really point the respondent in the direction of the type of answer that you're looking for. We really want to maintain a neutral balance in the way that questions are structured, because neutral questions are ones that really have the respondent experience in mind. So on the next slide, what does that kind of look like? So here's some use cases. Drafting a survey to avoid leading and loaded questions. So as I was just touching upon, leading questions tend to steer respondents' answers in a particular direction. So an example of that be, do you work in the IT industry? Now, instead of asking if someone works in the IT industry, have a multi-choice option for in which industry do you work? The quick tip here would be that adjectives and adverbs can be culprits of unintentionally leading questions. So mentioning an amazing product or a quick shipping product or fantastic customer service within the question is establishing a biased viewpoint. There's already framing essentially that's being done on a subconscious level to the object that you're or subject that you're asking the questions around. And that can be really picked up on by the respondent and lead to bias in the structure of the question and unintentionally gathering data that's not going to be as reliable. So in terms of loaded questions, here's another kind of workaround at the bottom. What problems do you have with your manager? I think we can see that the question is basically setting up that someone may have problems with their manager, and what are those problems? Already is framing happening. So the problem with that is that the question starts with the presumption that the respondent has issues with his or her manager when that may not actually be the case. Instead of focusing solely on the negative, an unbiased question would leave the response open for both positive and the negative feedback. So describe the relationship you have with your manager. That allows for them to describe it in either a positive or negative term or shades of both, but it's not framing the relationship in any particular direction. And there should be some relationship with the manager because they do work together. So it also sets them up to be able to provide a response rather than asking something that they really don't have any applicable information to provide about. Cool. So on the next slide, the other thing to really consider is taking a step back in terms of these surveys are going to be polling the online population of respondents. These are people that could be coming from lots of different communities of survey taking opportunities. Sometimes these are respondents who primarily would be reaching your survey having come from a native mobile application where they primarily take surveys. So when they're reaching your survey, this is one survey among others that they might partake in that day, and sort of they're in that state of mind to be ready to really do that. There are going to be other respondents who might be coming from communities where they have other opportunities to earn small incentives, play games, what have you, do other types of sort of quick ad copy type gigs. And so for those respondents, as well as ones that might be coming from kind of direct links on a website, hey, take our questionnaire, they're going to be more kind of exposed in the moment. I think of them kind of as like the proverbial person on the street, as if we all had clipboards and we're canvassing. And so, when those respondents are going to be in the pool, and especially just in general, we see that the transition over time has been towards shorter and shorter LOIs, or length of interviews on the surveys. We see plenty of customers fielding surveys that are much longer than this example here of the 3 to 6 minute range. But it is important to know that a large representation of the surveys that respondents might be taking are going to be relatively quick. And so thinking about that, it's also really important to then reflect back on the structure of your survey to know, am I kind of helping maintain a steady sense of flow or pacing for the respondents and doing what I can to help avoid fatigue within the survey? And so what we're going to cover here is just some examples of how a respondent could get fatigued. And if a respondent weren't fatigued, what can happen is that someone may be initially in the mindset to really provide objectively quality responses, but then as their attention wanes and they get more fatigued with their experience within the survey itself, they may tail off in terms of the engagement levels and the quality of the responses they give, especially if we're considering open-ended short answer responses as an example. So some of the things we suggest, use bold words throughout and other formatting options to kind of draw attention to the key words within the survey. Every page that they click on should really have a sense of continuity and also a sense of progress within the survey structure. If you're going to be using grid questions or multiple choice, limit the number of questions to 5. So rather than providing scales of 0 to 10, scales to 5 really helps make sure that we're not inundating the respondent with too many options. We'll touch on this more on coming slides, but utilizing branch logic is also an opportunity to expand the kind of ease of use, because you can make sure that respondents are not necessarily being asked questions that you don't intend them to have to answer if they've already provided responses to questions earlier within the survey that could sort of qualify them to branch or skip ahead. In terms of grids, you can see here, that's a good example screenshot of what I'd rather suggest avoiding, having a lot of grids of this kind of 0 to 10 scale. You know, the pros of grids, and certainly do use grids, but the recommendation would kind of be sparingly and, you know, with kind of ease of use, is that you would want to make sure that they are kind of limited in the number throughout the survey, more on a 0 to 5 scale, and that it's easy to navigate. If there's a lot of grids where there is just essentially too many data points, too many rows, and too many columns, it makes it cumbersome for the respondent to get through. Now you'll see on the next screen that when it comes to open-ended questions, the real keys here is that it should be evident to the respondents. So what type of response they should provide, a specific answer, an issue or a problem, an idea or an opinion. If they can answer in their own words and express it in their own opinions. So when we're asking these kind of open-ended feedback questions, we should really be direct and clear in what we are hoping to actually get their opinion, experience, or feedback specifically on, so they have an understanding of what it is that they should really be directing the response around. But at the same time, if possible, allowing for them to put it in their own words as much as possible. And I would also recommend, in regards to potential respondent fatigue, to place those open-ended questions towards the beginning of the survey. This is a real clear scenario fatigue, is where a respondent may be going through a lot of those grid questionnaires with the 0 to 10 kind of options. And then towards the tail of the survey, they're now being requested to answer open-ended feedback, multiple if so. That's really a scenario where they may feel too drained and feel that the survey's been potentially tedious before they're asked to kind of give this open-ended feedback that requires a little bit more creative thinking than just sort of selecting the options. So some of those energy reserves have basically already dissipated before they're answering these. And that's why the key recommendation would be to try to front load open-ended feedback earlier in the survey. So continuing on, one thing to really call attention to is that the online representation of respondents, there is the possibility that you will have respondents who essentially are not going to be paying attention to the survey and are ultimately trying to click through to the end. Now, the best recommendation I really would make for having throughout your surveys is considering implementing red herrings and attention checkers. So the big difference between red herrings and attention checkers is A red herring is going to be a question, and it's called red herrings because it's taken from old detective novels or what have you, where you're wondering who the culprit was, and the red herring is essentially the suspected one, but doesn't turn out to be actually the one. The logic for red herrings here in terms of questionnaires is basically asking a question that only someone who would be native to the industry or have experience within the topic of the survey, that they would know what the correct answer is. So this can be really relevant anytime that you would be targeting niche audiences, B2B audiences, or audiences that would have to have the actual expertise of coming from a particular role. That's where forming red herrings can be really key. And I know the Zoho team, as you reach out to them after this call, would be happy to help share some examples. Attention checkers, you've probably seen these before. This is going to be more commonly, which of the following options are not blue? I get a lot of ones that are rendered to be click the tiles that are a bicycle, or click the tiles that are a traffic light. But this also can be really helpful and preventative for online traffic that is bots or just respondents who are, again, not paying attention and trying to skip through. So definitely consider implementing these as part of your study. The other important thing to note is experience disclaimers. So for the individual respondents, it's really key to kind of humanize things. We all are working together, project manage large collections of data to be able to, put together these insights. But it's important to remember that there is an individual respondent out there who is taking this survey, and they're going to a lot of websites on the internet every day. And even within their survey taking experience, they might end up taking lots of different surveys. What can be really important is any surveys that you are going to be asking for personally identifiable information, email, phone number, depending on what country, could even be their postal code, as well as if you're going to be asking any questions that might be considered potentially invasive or private, or any other really data collection points beyond opinions. It can be really helpful to include an experience disclaimer. Other things that experience disclaimer can help frame beyond sort of scenarios where we're asking for information and we're reassuring them what we're going to be doing with that information. It also can just be helpful to frame what's to come in the survey itself. For example, you can see below, if there are areas where the respondent will be needing to engage with multimedia, let them know that they're going to have to watch videos in the survey and give responses around them. Or if there is just a general longer length of the survey, letting them know that this survey will take 45 minutes, for example, and we really need you to stay on till the end. All of that can really help set best expectations for the respondent, and then you're going to get their best earnest efforts towards providing their answers to your questions. So continuing on, you can see that there are also some tools on the next slide in terms of not just structure, but programming the survey for success. So working with Zoho and other survey platforms, there are, and the team from Zoho can expand on this as you reach out to them after the session, that from a technical level, there are some tools that we have at our disposal to make sure that the sort of flow of respondents to the survey and the sorting of respondents who maybe are not actually best fit to provide all of their responses can be managed at a technical level. So things like term points, which would be respondents who don't qualify to continue to the end of the survey, keeping those in mind to be early on. So if there's any pre-qualification, but then you're honing in on the audience and limiting some from permission to go all the way to the end, try to do that really at the latest within the first 5 minutes of the survey, because then that helps them feel as though their time was cared for and help keep them engaged in future survey opportunities. Optimize the survey for mobile devices. Yes, so probably, at least in our exchange, I would say over 70% of respondents are going to be on mobile devices. We do see plenty coming from desktop or tablets, what have you. But knowing that a lot of respondents are going to be on mobile devices, thinking about making sure that the survey is mobile optimized. It's very common, for example, with iPhones that vertical orientation can get locked. If your questionnaire looks very long in a grid structure, that can be difficult for the respondent to scroll through. There's also some advances in terms of just swipeability and things like that that can make it easier. I would also just say that it's important, knowing that different device types could be engaging with the survey, to test through and make sure that it is working functionally on those different device types. And then the final thing I would say too is implementing quotas within the survey platform to prevent overfilling. So any scenario where you may actually have particular quotas on the audience demographics that you're hoping to collect data from, using quota management tools within the survey platforms can help make sure that you are getting just the necessary people you need to come in and be respondents to that survey, and there's no sense of extra waste in terms of unintended audiences entering. So continuing on, in terms of programming for avoiding respondent fatigue, we touched on this just really briefly at the beginning, but skip and compound logic are opportunities where if you are looking to basically segment out the different audiences who could be taking this questionnaire based on how they respond to the earlier questions, you can actually use logic to provide different batches of subsequent questions to the respondents. So for example, I know the Cricket World Cup, like for example, just using a real world example, but if the questionnaire was around sporting and based on if respondents' preference was that they were rooting for South Africa or Australia today, you could present, based on that initial response of which team that they are rooting for, a different batch or series of questions. And that could really be used on any kind of scenario based on brands or general favorability. That the thought here would be, is there's an opportunity to not have to expose all the questions to all respondents if we can more easily parse them out earlier on in the survey, for sure to be doing that. And then that can be done either in a branch out manner, or as you can see here in the model, a skip ahead, that if yes or if no to an earlier condition, they would be able to move forward as maybe that next subsequent question doesn't apply, basically. So definitely recommend as you talk with your Zoho representatives about how to implement this, because it can be really key for a faster and more efficient survey. So continuing on, mobile optimization, kind of talked through this a little bit, but really what we're talking through is mobile optimization does not mean solely that it technically can run on a mobile device, but is it easy to see in terms of the pixels, the rendering, the general load time of moving through the pages, keeping the response options vertical, for example, and just making sure that it is not difficult for the respondent to navigate the structure of the survey if they are on a mobile device. Awesome. So on the next screen, I also would say that another element of programming that is available to be leveraged is that there are auto terminate checks that can be set up on the platform. I would definitely ask your colleagues or your representatives at Zoho about implementing auto terminate checks. But this is where, if you are getting respondents who are not properly engaging in the survey, just selecting all the same answer option or typing gibberish, that there's ways for them to be flagged and terminated the survey so that you don't have to rely on cleaning the data afterwards and then finding that you might need to go back into field. So it's great that these exist, and another reason to just recommend working with Zoho. You'll see on the next screen, just to put a bow on things, we have just one more slide or two, I believe, is that we've talked generally about structure broadly of surveys, making sure that they're easy to navigate and that it's easy for the respondent to provide their answers. But it's also important to consider that before going into field, depending on what project you are managing, the online population is not entirely going to be reflective of the census population in any particular country. I am currently in the US, just outside of New Orleans. So for example, in the US, typically more women take surveys than men. So therefore, the respondents won't automatically align with what we'd expect the population to be statistically. So to be successful in reaching your quotas, you may need to implement a management strategy. And what that may be is around working with your partners to identify down to the different audience demographics what the likely feasibility would be, and then incorporating that information on the likely feasibility of achieving the quotas or counts that you need from these different targets or target audiences as a way to then sort of break up the project and take a look at how are we going to pace out and accomplish the field work on this data collection. And sometimes that may require approaches that basically segment out the project to go after specifically challenging audiences in terms of feasibility in sort of one approach, while then also targeting your more readily available audience demographics on a different approach, rather than trying to approach all of them with the same online sampling feasibility or online sampling feasibility approach. So that's really important to note. And it's definitely something that we work with our customers at Cint every day. And it's definitely something that I encourage you to inquire to the team at Zoho. And so here, just to kind of put a bow on things, these are really the take homes that we would definitely recommend as applicable. Mobile optimization, length of interview, 10 minutes is ideal. There are surveys fielded far longer than that, 3 times the length. But I think that's where just some of these suggestions on making it easy in the sense of pacing can be really relevant. We all know what it's like to go to a movie that was 2 hours and felt like 3 hours. And we also know what it's like to go to a movie that was 3 hours and felt like it moved right along. That's what I mean in terms of pacing to kind of think of when you're implementing your survey design. Open ends, less than 5, I would say, would be the great rule of thumb, and have them primarily front-loaded earlier in the survey. Keeping this notion of respondent fatigue in mind. Translation quality in terms of, is the questionnaire structured in the native kind of language or colloquialism of the audience that would be taking it in the market. Testing just to make sure that you've had test sessions that everything works. And then putting in for safety checks, attention checkers, or other quality measures such as auto terminations and red herrings. Now, going to just touch on working with Zoho. So here are some of the key highlights. There are more than 250 templates that can be leveraged with over 25 different question types. Supports survey logics for relevant questioning, the type of things I was just touching on. Supports translation to help make the principles I was touching upon easier for you. White labeling, multi-channel distribution, and actually Zoho provides both offline and online product channels in terms of the ability to field surveys. I believe we're also, there's access to qualified global audiences through the integration with Cint, economical market research survey platform in terms of the ease to be able to start working with Zoho, and that there is the ability to reach out to the right respondent demographics to be able to match those audiences that I was talking to. And finally, there is a comprehensive dashboard. Zoho provides turf analysis, AI analysis in terms of when I was talking to scrubbing the data, both word cloud and sentiment analysis for long form answers to be able to measure the quality of those responses. And there are powerful integrations with Zoho Analytics, Zoho Campaigns, and Zapier in play. And finally, question to ask is really, is my product in demand? Who will buy my product? How do I price my product? And you can get all of your all the answers to by pressing these questions on the launch pad to help catapult your business at Zoho. So touching on next steps about the free market research for startups offer, you could receive over 1,000 free market research samples, It's valid for 360 days from the date of approval. There's flexibility to use across all samples at once or divide them over multiple occasions as per your needs. The regions for Zoho is India, selected countries in the Middle East and Africa, Indonesia, Brazil, and Australia. And to get going on that registration process, the link will actually be right here in the deck. And any other questions you have, definitely recommend you reaching out to the contact support email right there at the bottom of this deck. And in terms of why you should choose Zoho for market research, the survey subscription through walled credits, you could spotlight your own brand, you get the right answers to the right people in terms of skip logic, disqualification logic, unique URLs, things I hadn't even fully touched on in terms of just best practices. They're actually doing it here. Never at loss for responses, so automated response collection until the required limit is reached. Qualified respondents at a stone throw, so it's backed up by trustworthy research panels for unbiased responses, scaling up with data-backed decisions, cross-tabulated data sets and dissected dashboards for in-depth insights, and as we mentioned, over 300 plus survey templates with 75 plus language translations. So you can see the whole holistic experience of being able to draft the survey, go into field, manage the data collection, and then be able to gather insights from that data, which is really exciting to see happening. Awesome. Thank you so much.
So you're happy that you've joined us all. Thank you so much. Till next time, keep learning and exploring. Have a good one.